You know exactly what you need to do, but something invisible continues to block your path. Hours turn into days, days into months, and that goal that should change your life remains a distant ghost. While others move forward, you remain trapped in an endless cycle of preparation. What you don't realize is that it's not a lack of knowledge, resources, or luck. It's something much deeper, a mental prison so familiar that you don't even see it anymore. In the next few minutes, I'll show you how to unlock the force that already exists within you but has been systematically sabotaged by patterns you don't even notice. This isn't just another empty promise. It's an awakening that separates those who merely dream from those who actually achieve. Because if you don't break this pattern now, you'll continue to see your true potential slip through your fingers as life passes by. Everything you want sits on the other side of an invisible wall. This wall wasn't built by your circumstances, your background, or your lack of resources. Napoleon Hill, after studying 500 of the world's most successful individuals for over 20 years, discovered something profound. The primary barrier to human evolution isn't external at all. It's internal. You've felt it before that moment when you know exactly what needs to be done, yet something holds you back. That hesitation, that doubt, that inexplicable resistance that seems to grow stronger the more important the task. Hill called this the devil of the mind, but in modern terms, we recognize it as self-sabotage, a psychological mechanism so deeply ingrained that it operates below your conscious awareness. What makes this barrier so dangerous isn't its strength, but its invisibility. You can't fight what you can't see. And right now, as you read these words, it's working against your whispering, limiting beliefs, generating fear, and keeping you exactly where you are instead of where you could be. The question isn't whether this force exists in your life. The question is, are you finally ready to recognize it and break free? Your mind is not just a passive receiver of information. It's an active creator of your reality. Napoleon Hill described the mind as a mental factory that produces thoughts the way a physical factory produces goods. And just like any factory, the quality of what comes out depends entirely on what goes in and how it's processed. Most people never realize they are the owners of this factory. Instead, they allow it to run on autopilot, producing thoughts contaminated by fear, doubt, and negative programming from their past. They wonder why their lives don't change, never realizing that they're manufacturing the very barriers that block their evolution. The most successful people throughout history, from Andrew Carnegie to Thomas Edison, from Henry Ford to contemporary giant Saul, understood one fundamental truth. They had complete control over this mental factory. They rigorously monitored what went in, carefully designed the production process, and meticulously inspected what came out. This wasn't a passive activity, but an active, intentional process of mental creation. Right now, your mental factory is producing thoughts that either propel you forward or hold you back. The patterns were set long ago, often in childhood, and have been running without your conscious oversight ever since. Today, you have a choice. Will you continue allowing this factory to produce thoughts that limit your evolution? Or will you take ownership and transform it into the powerful creative force it was designed to be? Why do so many people drift through life, always busy but never advancing? Napoleon Hill's research revealed a striking pattern. 98% of people have no definite purpose guiding their actions. They react to life rather than create it. They follow paths laid out by others rather than designing their own. They mistake motion for progress. A definite purpose isn't just a goal. It's not something you achieve and then discard. It's a governing principle, a North Star that aligns your thoughts, focuses your energy, and filters your decisions. Without it, your mental factory produces scattered, inconsistent results. With it, every thought and action becomes part of a coherent, powerful momentum toward your evolution. Hill discovered this principle through Edwin C. Barnes, who arrived at Thomas Edison's laboratory with one definite purpose: to become Edison's business partner. He didn't just want to work for Edison, he declared he would work with him. Despite having no connections, no money, and no conventional qualifications, Barnes held this purpose with such conviction that he eventually achieved exactly what he set out to do, amassing a fortune in the process. The power of a definite purpose lies not in its reasonableness, but in its clarity and emotional intensity. When you declare what you will become with absolute certainty, not what you hope to become or what you'll try to become, your subconscious mind accepts this as an instruction and begins reorganizing your mental factory to produce thoughts aligned with this new reality. What is your definite purpose? Not what sounds good or what others expect of you, but what burns within you with such clarity that you would pursue it even if the path were difficult. If you cannot answer this question with immediate certainty, you have identified the first and perhaps most significant reason why your evolution has stalled. You've been taught a dangerous half-truth, that evolution and success are individual achievements. Napoleon Hill's research revealed exactly the opposite. No great achievement in human history has ever been the product of a single mind working in isolation. Every breakthrough, every fortune, every transformation comes through what Hill called the mastermind principle, the coordination of knowledge and effort between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. The human mind is electrochemical in nature. When two or more minds come together in harmony toward a shared purpose, they create something greater than the sum of their parts, a third, more powerful mind. This is not metaphorical but literal. The energy, insights, and creative solutions that emerge from this alliance cannot be produced by any individual alone, no matter how brilliant. This explains why you've struggled to evolve despite your best individual efforts. You're trying to generate power that can only come from connection. Henry Ford, despite limited formal education, built an industrial empire not through individual genius but by grounding himself with people who possessed the knowledge he lacked. Andrew Carnegie attributed his success not to his own abilities but to his talent for enlisting the service of people who knew more than he did. Your evolution has stalled because you've been trying to power a factory with a single generator when you need a power plant. Who are the minds that complement yours? Who challenges your thinking, expands your perspective, and holds you accountable to your highest purpose? If you cannot immediately identify these people, you've discovered another critical reason for your stagnation. Today, make a decision. No more lone wolf striving. No more isolated effort. Identify the minds that must be part of your evolution and begin building those alliances with intentionality and purpose. Your next breakthrough is not within you, it's between you and the right mastermind alliance. Logic makes people think, but emotion makes them act. This fundamental truth explains why knowledge alone has failed to transform your life. You know what to do, but knowing isn't enough. Napoleon Hill discovered that all thought which transforms into action requires emotional energy, what he called emotional magnetism. Every thought you produce in your mental factory has two components: the intellectual content, the what, and the emotional charge, the why. The intellectual component may point the direction, but it's the emotional component that provides the fuel. Without sufficient emotional charge, even the most brilliant ideas remain theoretical, interesting, but inert. This explains why you've struggled to evolve, despite understanding what needs to be done. You've been trying to power transformation with intellectual understanding alone. Like trying to drive a car that has direction but no gasoline. Knowledge without emotional intensity produces contemplation, not action. And contemplation never created evolution. Hill studied how Thomas Edison persisted through 10,000 failures before inventing the practical electric light bulb. What separated Edison from others with similar knowledge wasn't intellectual capacity, but emotional resilience, the ability to convert the negative emotion of temporary defeat into the positive emotion of renewed determination. Your evolution requires you to master what I call the emotion equation. E equals I times F. Evolution E equals intention I multiplied by feeling intensity F. Weak feelings produce weak results, regardless of how clear your intentions may be. Strong feelings, whether desire, determination, faith, or even productive fear, generate the momentum necessary for transformation. Right now, your most important task isn't gathering more information or creating better plans. It's infusing your existing knowledge with the emotional energy required for action. What emotions drive you? How intensely do you feel them? If your emotional connection to your goals is lukewarm, you've identified another critical reason for your stagnation. Persistence is the single quality that has contributed more to human achievement than any other. Yet it remains profoundly misunderstood. Napoleon Hill discovered a paradox. Those who need persistence the most have it the least, while those who have achieved the most needed it less frequently. This persistence paradox explains why you've struggled to evolve. You've been treating persistence as a brute force, quality pushing against resistance through sheer willpower. But Hill's research revealed something unexpected. The highest achievers rarely experienced their persistence as difficult striving. Instead, they described it as an unwavering commitment, so naturally aligned with their definite purpose that continuing forward felt easier than stopping. Consider R.U. Darby, who quit gold mining just 3 feet from a massive vein of gold, only to watch someone else extract millions by persisting just a little further. The tragedy wasn't Darby's lack of effort. He had worked tirelessly, but his inability to recognize that. Resistance often intensifies right before breakthrough. What separated him from success wasn't capacity, but perspective. The quality of your persistence depends entirely on how you interpret obstacles. When you encounter resistance, do you see it as evidence you should stop, or as confirmation you're getting closer to breakthrough? Do you interpret failure as the end of the road, or as essential education? These interpretations aren't just philosophical positions. They're practical determinants of whether you'll continue or quit. Hill discovered that every great achievement comes after temporary defeat, often multiple defeats. The most successful individuals weren't those who avoided failure, but those who failed productively extracting lessons, maintaining faith, and adjusting methods without abandoning their definite purpose. Your evolution has stalled because you've misinterpreted the meaning of resistance. You've confused temporary defeat with permanent failure. You've surrendered precisely when persistence would have yielded its greatest rewards. The question isn't whether you're capable of persistence, you are. The question is whether you've developed the interpretative framework that makes persistence inevitable rather than exhausting. Beneath your conscious awareness operates the most powerful force in your mental life, your subconscious mind. Napoleon Hill discovered that this hidden dimension of thought doesn't just influence your evolution, it controls it. While your conscious mind analyzes, decides, and directs, your subconscious mind automates, executes, and manifests. This explains why willpower alone has failed to transform your life. Willpower operates at the conscious level, but your behaviors are primarily driven by subconscious programming installed long before you developed the capacity for critical thinking. These programs' beliefs about your capabilities, your worth, what's possible for someone like you weren't chosen by you. They were absorbed from your environment and experiences, particularly during childhood. Your mental factory's production line follows these subconscious blueprints regardless of what your conscious mind desires. It's like trying to drive a car in one direction while the autopilot is programmed for another. No matter how hard you press the accelerator willpower, the vehicle's underlying programming determines its ultimate direction. Hill studied how Enrico Caruso, despite crippling performance anxiety, became the world's greatest tenor by systematically reprogramming his subconscious through affirmations that eventually overpowered his conscious fears. Thomas Edison would fall asleep focusing on specific problems and wake with solutions provided by his subconscious during sleep. Your evolution has stalled because you've been trying to create change exclusively through conscious effort, while the real power lies in reprogramming your subconscious patterns. These patterns aren't changed through knowledge acquisition, but through persistent impression. The repetition of new thoughts with sufficient emotional intensity to override existing programming. Today, recognize that your most important work isn't external achievement, but internal reprogramming. What limiting beliefs operate beneath your awareness? What subconscious patterns sabotage your conscious intentions? As Hill discovered, any idea, plan, or purpose may be placed in the mind through repetition of thought. The question is whether you'll consciously direct this programming or remain at the mercy of patterns installed by default. Knowledge without action is not power, it's potential. And potential without expression leads not to evolution but to frustration. Napoleon Hill observed that the graveyard is the richest place on earth because it contains countless brilliant ideas, transformative inventions, and world-changing innovations that were never implemented. People died with their music still in them. This explains another critical reason why you've struggled to evolve. You've mistaken learning for growing, planning for doing, and intention for action. But Hill's exhaustive research revealed an uncomfortable truth. The marketplace rewards only executed ideas, not contemplated ones. No one pays for what you know. They pay for what you do with what you know. Consider the tragic case of Dr. Elmer Gates, who invented numerous devices but failed to patent and produce most of them. Watching others grow wealthy from similar ideas they actually implemented. Or contrast this with Henry Ford, who wasn't the most knowledgeable automotive engineer but implemented his vision while others merely theorized. The quality that separates those who evolve from those who merely exist isn't intelligence, talent, or even creativity, it's decisive action. Hill called this the habit of doing more than paid for, and he found it present in every successful person he studied. They didn't just meet expectations, they exceeded them. They didn't wait for perfect conditions. They created conditions through their action. Your evolution has stalled because you've been waiting for more information, for certainty, for permission, for perfect timing. But these are sophisticated forms of procrastination disguised as prudence. The truth Hill discovered is that clarity comes through movement, not before it. Perfect timing is a myth that has kept countless people stuck in permanent preparation. Today, you face a simple but profound choice. Will you continue preparing to live, or will you begin actually living? Will you remain a perpetual student, or will you become a doer? Napoleon Hill's research is unequivocal. Those who act, even imperfectly, evolve exponentially faster than those who wait for ideal circumstances. Fear is the primary reason human evolution stalls. Not external challenges, not lack of opportunity, not even lack of knowledge, but fear. Napoleon Hill's research led him to catalogue the 6 basic fears that paralyze human potential: the fears of poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death. He made a shocking discovery. 98% of these fears never materialize. They are phantoms, powerful in their effect, but illusory in their substance. This explains why, despite your capabilities, you've struggled to evolve. You've been held hostage by emotional reactions to possibilities, not realities. Fear doesn't respond to logic. It responds to perceived threats, whether those threats exist or not. Your body and mind can't differentiate between a real tiger and an imagined one. Both produce the same physiological response. Edwin C. Barnes could have been paralyzed by legitimate fears when approaching Thomas Edison without connections, resources, or conventional qualifications. But he distinguished himself through what Hill called burning desire, an emotional force so powerful it overpowered fear rather than eliminating it. This reveals a critical insight. The evolutionaries throughout history weren't fearless. They were fear-conquering. They felt the same anxieties as everyone else, but developed the capacity to act despite these feelings, rather than being controlled by them. They understood that courage isn't the absence of fear, but action in its presence. Your evolution has stalled because you've been waiting for fear to subside before taking bold action. But fear never subsides through waiting. It subsides through action. Every fear shrinks when confronted directly and grows when avoided. The only way out is through. Today, identify your predominant fear, not the superficial one you acknowledge publicly, but the deeper one that truly controls your decisions. Is it fear of failure, of success, of judgment, of responsibility? Name it precisely, for, as Hill discovered, fears are nothing more than states of mind. Once named, fear loses much of its power, and what remains can be transformed into fuel for decisive action. Everything we've covered leads to one inescapable truth. Evolution isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose. Napoleon Hill called this definiteness of decision, and he found it to be the delineating factor between those who achieve greatness and those who merely wish for it. A true decision isn't a preference, a hope, or even a strong desire. It's an irrevocable commitment that eliminates all other possibilities. The word decide comes from Latin roots, meaning to cut off. When you truly decide to evolve, you cut off all other options. You burn the mental and emotional bridges to your current state. You make continuing as you are more painful than the discomfort of growth. This explains why most people never truly evolve. They make tentative commitments that preserve escape routes. Hill documented how W. Clement Stone transformed a small insurance company into an empire worth hundreds of millions through definite decisions backed by immediate action. When faced with the Great Depression, rather than retreating like his competitors, Stone decisively expanded, hiring additional salespeople when everyone else was firing them. His evolution wasn't a response to favorable circumstances, but a decision that created new circumstances. Your life reflects your past decisions, not your hopes, not your knowledge, not even your capabilities, but your decisions. If you're not where you want to be, it's because you haven't yet made the evolution decision with sufficient clarity and emotional intensity to override your established patterns. You've been making what Hill called half decisions, commitments contingent on comfortable conditions or guaranteed outcomes. True evolution begins with a decision so clear it can be stated in a single sentence, and so compelling it can wake you up at 5 a.m. without an alarm clock. It's a commitment beyond convenience, beyond mood, beyond temporary motivation. It's the line in the sand that separates your past from your future. The moment of truth has arrived. You can continue reading these words as more interesting content that will soon be forgotten. Or you can let them penetrate deeply into your soul, marking the exact moment when you decided never again to be a hostage to your own limitations. The difference between these two choices isn't just what you'll do in the next few minutes, but who you'll become in the next few years. What will it be? This isn't mere rhetoric. This is the fundamental choice that has separated the evolutionaries from the stationaries throughout human history. Napoleon Hill studied the lives of those who transformed themselves and their worlds, and he found this pattern without exception. At some point, each of them made an irrevocable decision to evolve beyond their current limitations, backed by such emotional intensity that retreat became impossible. Today, right now, you stand at this same threshold. The knowledge you've gained means nothing without this decision. The potential you possess means nothing without this commitment. Everything you've read about mindset, success, action, and overcoming self-sabotage culminates in this single moment of choice. Will you decide, truly decide to evolve, not try to evolve, not hope to evolve, not plan to evolve, but to commit with such clarity and conviction that your entire being aligns with this new direction? This isn't about what you'll do when you finish reading. It's about who you'll be from this moment forward. Look at your life with unflinching honesty. Are you satisfied with your current trajectory? Will continuing as you are lead to the fulfillment and impact you desire? If not, then recognize that evolution isn't optional, it's essential. And it begins not with new information, but with a new decision. The power to make this decision exists within you now. It requires no permission, no perfect circumstances, no additional resources. It requires only your willingness to draw a line between who you've been and who you're becoming. To say, with absolute conviction, from this moment forward, I am evolving beyond my previous limitations. This is not a preference. This is not a hope. This is my irrevocable decision. Make this decision now, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when the conditions are right. Now, in this moment, with full awareness of what it means and what it will demand of you. Evolution awaits your decision. You've now understood the fundamental reasons why your evolution has stalled and the principles that can transform your trajectory. But understanding without implementation leads nowhere. Napoleon Hill discovered that knowledge becomes power only when organized into definite plans and expressed through action. Let me give you a practical framework for implementing everything we've covered. First, clarify your definite purpose. Not vague aspirations, but a specific destination that ignites your emotional intensity. Write this purpose in a single sentence, beginning with I am, rather than I will or I want to. This isn't semantic wordplay. It's psychological programming. Your subconscious responds to present tense declarations, not future intentions. Second, identify your limiting beliefs. These aren't surface thoughts, but deeper convictions about what's possible or appropriate for you. They often disguise themselves as realistic thinking or practical concerns. Examine your thought patterns when faced with opportunity or challenge. What automatic responses emerge? These reveal your programmed limitations. Third, rewrite these limiting beliefs deliberately and persistently. Hill found that the subconscious mind can be reprogrammed through what we now call neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself through consistent input. Create alternative statements that directly counter your limiting beliefs, and repeat them with emotional intensity until they begin to feel more natural than your previous programming. Fourth, establish your mastermind alliance. Identify individuals whose knowledge, perspective, and energy complement yours. This isn't networking. It's the intentional creation of a mental power plant. Meet regularly with absolute clarity of purpose. Make these interactions sacred commitments, not casual connections. Fifth, develop your emotion management system. Recognize that emotions aren't just feelings, but energetic fuel that can be directed. Create daily practices that generate the emotional states conducive to your evolution, whether through visualization, physical movement, music, or strategic questioning. Emotion isn't something that happens to you. It's something you cultivate. Sixth, implement the daily evolution minimum, the non-negotiable actions you'll take regardless of circumstances, mood, or convenience. This isn't about volume, but consistency. Hill found that small actions taken consistently produce exponential results over time. Define these actions with such specificity that tracking their completion becomes objective rather than subjective. Seventh, create your fear inventory and conquest plan. List every fear that has held you back, from the obvious to the subtle. Beside each fear, detail a specific action that directly confronts it. Fear shrinks through exposure, not analysis. Schedule these fear-conquering actions with the same seriousness you would any critical business appointment. Eighth, establish your decision protocol. Most decisions we face are predictable. Create in advance the criteria by which you'll make choices aligned with your evolution rather than your comfort. Remove the burden of in-the-moment willpower by determining your responses before the situations arise. Finally, implement the accountability structure that ensures your follow-through. The highest achievers Hill studied didn't rely on motivation or discipline alone. They created external structures that made their evolution inevitable rather than optional. Whether through public commitments, financial stakes, or regular review with your mastermind alliance, make your accountability more powerful than your resistance. This framework isn't theoretical. It's the practical distillation of principles that have transformed ordinary individuals into evolutionaries throughout human history. It doesn't require special talent or favorable circumstances, only your decision to implement it with consistency and conviction. The moment of truth has arrived. You now possess both the understanding and the framework required for your evolution. The only remaining question is, will you act on what you've learned, or will this become merely another interesting intellectual exercise? The choice and the consequences are yours alone. We've reached the culmination of our journey. You now understand the invisible barriers that have blocked your evolution. You've seen how your mental factory operates and how to transform its production. You've recognized the power of definite purpose, mastermind alliances, emotional intensity, and persistent action. You've confronted the illusion of fear and the reality of decisive choice. But knowledge without implementation is worthless. Information without transformation is merely entertainment. Napoleon Hill observed that many people mistake intellectual understanding for actual growth, collecting concepts rather than applying them. They become, in his words, walking encyclopedias of information that they never use. Don't let this be your story. Don't allow these principles to become merely interesting ideas that you acknowledge and then abandon. Your evolution isn't optional, it's essential. Not just for your own fulfillment, but for the impact you're capable of having in the world. Think of the innovators, leaders, and visionaries throughout history who applied these exact principles to transform not just their own lives, but entire industries, nations, and eras. They weren't intellectually superior or especially privileged. They simply applied with conviction what others merely contemplated with interest. You stand now at the intersection of knowledge and action, of potential and manifestation. Everything you've read leads to this singular moment of decision. Will you evolve, or will you merely know how you could have evolved? The transformation imperative demands more than passive consumption. It requires your complete commitment, intellectual, emotional, and physical. Not sometime in the future when conditions seem ideal, but now, in this moment, with whatever resources and circumstances you currently possess. Napoleon Hill's timeless insight remains as true today as when he first articulated it. The starting point of all achievement is desire. Keep this constantly in mind. Weak desire brings weak results, just as a small fire makes a small amount of heat. How intensely does your fire burn? How deeply do you desire the evolution we've discussed? These aren't rhetorical questions, but the actual determinants of your future trajectory. The universe doesn't respond to what we know or what we wish, for it responds to what we embody through consistent thought, emotion, and action. Today, right now, make the decision that will separate your future from your past. Not with intellectual agreement, but with emotional commitment. Not with tentative exploration, but with decisive implementation. Not with "I'll try," but with "I will." Your evolution awaits not some distant catalyst, but your present choice. Choose now.